Hello, Jeremy here with the new box set coming out in February, according to Al Jardine. I wanted to talk about the last box set that we got, the archival release, which was the Beach Boys 1972 Sail on Sailor box set. We're going to talk about the vinyl box set today because that's what this channel is about. First of all, let's talk about the positives. Okay, once again, we have some nice packaging. You gotta hand it to them, I'd say, for Feel Flows and this, and even the Sounds of Summer. Ooh, that had some nice presentation as well. And I'll talk about the Sounds of Summer, that 6 LP box set soon, because I do have it. But it's nice. I like the art on the front of it. Again, I know, people didn't like the Feel Flows art style, at least not everybody. But I think for the most part, people liked this one. I mean, what's not to like about it? I like the texture on this box set. That's very nice. It feels akin to the music inside and to this period of music. Oh, look, I got a stain there. I get coffee stains on a lot of my records. I wish I could say it's because this box set is well loved. But let's talk about what's on the inside here. You get this booklet. Again, I like these booklets. I feel like they're really well done. You get a lot of just old concert posters. You get Brian's sketch of the fairy tale. You get some great pictures in here. Look at this. Look at this. Look at Mike. Is that just like the best look for Mike or what? And I'm not just saying that because I also wear a beanie. I'm also not Mike loving it under here, okay? I have hair. But I think that's a good look for Mike. I think Al's got a great look during this time period. Look at Al. Look at that. He looks so cool. What happened, huh? Next up, we've got the Carl and the Passions LP. This is great. One of my big complaints from the previous box set, Feel Flows, was that they put on a bunch of bonus tracks on the end of each side. They didn't do that here. I feel like somebody listened. I'm not saying they listened to me, but maybe just the collective voice of the fans. You got Holland. Once again, no bonus tracks. Love that. Not the nicest jackets in the world, but they're well done. I like them. And then, of course, we have the Fairy Tale EP. Always loved the art for this thing. And then you have the Carnegie Hall live performances on these 3 LPs, except the last one, after some of the concert tracks, we've got some bonus tracks. We've got Love, you've got Hard Time, Carry Me Home, Fairy Tale Music, which is kind of a compilation of all the music on the Fairy Tale EP without the voice over. Some really nice presentation here. It's almost like the nicer the presentation is, the harder it is to accept that what we got inside, the music, falls short of certainly my expectations, but I would say a lot of the fans as well. Now, I'm not talking about the bonus tracks that are on the digital and CD release, because there's a lot of lovely backing tracks, a lot of great a cappella tracks, and you get a lot of unreleased tracks, and those are really, really nice to have. But let's start talking about the music. First of all, you have Carl and the Passions. Now, of these 5 LPs, this is probably the one that I actually do listen to from time to time. That's because, unlike the Holland album, this doesn't have as many distortion issues. The mastering is very in your face and pumped up, but in a way that I don't mind as far as an alternate listening experience for this album, because I have the original pressing. I have a couple copies of the original pressing now, and it sounds great. This is a very modern take on the album, but in a way that doesn't offend me so much. I know it's still has its issues. I also like having another copy that doesn't have the Pet Sounds double LP jacket. You know, it's nice to just, you know, Carl and the Passions, this is the album, okay? And then Holland doesn't fare quite as well as Carl and the Passions. This is the one that almost immediately you start to hear some real distortion. On Sail on Sailor, you hear it a lot on Steamboat, especially when the guitar solo comes in. And again, it's that Mark Lynette new mastering technique. It's so bright, it's so top and bottom heavy that a lot of the nuances start to get lost. If you listen to these reissues kind of in a vacuum and you don't compare them to any like previous releases, you can almost get used to them. You know, a lot of people, I think, who don't care as much about the fidelity will have a fine time listening to this box set. And I have nothing against people who are okay with that, you know. That's probably a big majority of casual fans that pick these up, or maybe even some diehards. I'm not saying that in order to be a diehard fan, you gotta hate the mastering on all these albums. I'm just saying, for me personally, as a diehard fan who has bought a lot of Beach Boys stuff and continues to shell out money for these releases, I'm not happy with the way that these two LPs sound. Okay, and then you get into the Carnegie Hall LPs. Now, by the time I bought this box set, I already kind of knew that the main albums themselves didn't sound great, and I probably wasn't going to listen to them very much. I bought this box set primarily for these Carnegie Hall LPs. And at first I put them on, and overall the mastering wasn't egregious. You know, it was fine enough. And the performances sounded really good. And I thought, oh, okay, 3 out of 5 ain't bad for this box set. I'll listen to these. And I took them out of the box set. I put them in my record collection, you know, where I put a lot of my Beach Boys live albums. I thought I would listen to these. You know, there's certain performances in here that I really, really enjoy. What happened was people started to talk about how some of these live performances weren't necessarily authentic, that there were fly-ins happening from other performances that they had done around the time, and also some fly-ins from some studio takes. I know specifically on Leaving This Town, a lot of the backing vocals on that were just lifted straight from the main album version. I know that on You Need a Mess of Help to Stand Alone, that also has some vocals that were just taken straight from the album. I know there's a song on here where Al's vocal performance was taken from a completely different performance that wasn't one of the Carnegie Hall performances. Somebody might be saying, well, what's the problem? This is something that Brian would do a lot back in the day. Even with their first concert album, he was recording studio versions of Fun, 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 and I Get Around, and putting those on the concert album with some crowd noise in the back. The whole Party album is just a facade. So why is it so bad that Mark Lynette is doing similar things on these live albums? Well, I think there's two things here. First of all, this isn't 1972. When Brian was making those decisions, you know, he was making them for the band at the time, and that was kind of the vision for these albums. It's different, and you have to say it is different for somebody 40, 50 years later to come in and be making those decisions on behalf of the band, especially when you're using, you know, newer technology and digital trickery that the band didn't have at the time. It just makes the whole thing feel less authentic. And the second point is, when you release a big box set like this, and it's a lot of money to buy, and you advertise it and promote it saying that there's going to be finally, you know, I just remember them they would always say, finally, you're going to hear those live Carnegie Hall performances, and it's going to be officially released. As a Beach Boys fan, you go, great, I will spend good money to have those. But then you get them, and I think it would be fair to say that that is not what was released here. That's not what these are. These are approximations of this concert with a lot of digital trickery to make it sound like maybe, I guess, the band was better on those nights than they actually were. I don't really care. I'm happy to hear some flubs. I'm happy to hear some sour notes. I just want to actually hear what it was like to be there on that night. And that's where I don't really understand who these albums are for, because I would say that's almost every fan I've talked to, that's their perspective, is we just want to get the real thing. We don't need this like fake version of the band that was cobbled together 50 years later. We know that the Beach Boys weren't flawless on stage. I don't know that many bands were. I would much rather hear all of the imperfections. And I mean, if you're gonna like start taking things out and putting things in, why don't you just remove all of Mike Love's banter in here? Because I'd say it's a big turnoff. He kind of turns on the crowd at one point, and it's awkward. But again, that's what it was like to be there that night, or one of these 2 or 3 nights that they were here at Carnegie Hall in 1972. That's what was being sold when they promoted this box set. So that's why I think people aren't really happy with these Carnegie Hall LPs. And that's why I don't really listen to these very much. And it's sad because I think there probably is like 70, 80%, maybe even more, that are genuine performances from the night. But you start to question everything. And the more I would go on to message boards, the more people were pointing out, oh, that was actually taken from here, and that's actually flown in from here. And I was like, you know what? I don't need this. I can just listen to the in-concert album, which is a great live album from the time. And if there were any edits made to that concert album, they were made in 1972 or 73. That leads us to talking about this new release that's coming out. I believe it's called We Gotta Groove. That's the last we heard from Al in one of his onstage confessions. If that's the title, I'm fine. I just kind of want the release to happen, and I'm really looking forward to it. I will be very interested to see how this release differs from the last 2, because Mark Lynette, I don't think, will have done any major work on it. I don't know if he did some work on some of this stuff and then he got let go and then someone else got brought in. I don't know if there'll be any crossover there. But what I hope is that we just get a different person. I hope we're getting some vintage mixes. That's the thing I'm most excited about. Nothing can replace the original LPs, but especially with Adult Child coming out kind of for the first time officially, I hope the versions of those songs sound good and that we don't have to resort to fans remixing and remastering everything just to make it sound decent. Again, love the packaging. Hope the packaging on the new one is also good. But if it wasn't, you know, but the music still sounded good, I'd trade those two things. I didn't even really get to talking about any of the bonus tracks that are on here. Carry Me Home, which was just cooked to a crisp. We've Got Love, which has the drum machine kind of higher in the mix, which again would sound cool, except it's so trebly. All in all, I would say that I actually prefer Feel Flows over this box set. There was just a lot more bonus tracks on there, a lot of stuff that hadn't been released. And in some ways, the mastering, at least for the bonus tracks, was less offensive. There was less to ruin, you know, with this material. So, man, I don't like sounding so negative about this stuff. That's just the way it is. I am grateful to the fan mixers out there who do get a hold of some of this unreleased material that, you know, that's finally officially released and make it into something more like it should have been. So to all you fan mixers out there, thank you. And maybe on this next box set, you won't have to do that. Have a good one.